All right, everyone. This is about a story that has gone a bit viral in the past 24 hours, which is the allegation by Joe Biden's wife's ex-husband that he had an affair with her that ended their marriage back in the 1970s, and this is, I believe, a very, very bad sign for the Democrats. Now, if you go on Twitter, which, by the way, I don't have a Twitter account anymore, it was banned, but if you go on Twitter, there's a lot of people tweeting about this, and it happens to be coming out on the day, the day of the Democratic convention, and this guy summarizes it very well. In response to David Weissman saying the New York Post is garbage, he says, when the Post runs stuff on Trump's past, the left loves it. When they run stuff on Biden and family, they must be garbage. LOL. Well, it turns out this was not the New York Post. The Post merely repeated what the Daily Mail wrote. And the Daily Mail, as those of you that aren't retarded know, is a British newspaper. It is a tabloid. It does have a lot of like gossipy crap. And typically their stories have at least a wrinkle of truth. And I would put money on the New York, the Daily Mail having a better record for accuracy, pound for pound, than the New York Times or CNN or the Washington Post. Even with all their trashy crap that they publish, which is largely about things like the Kardashians and Paris Hilton, they're still more accurate than all of the liberal media. So we're going to dive a little bit into this now. I want to also let you know that I think in the near future I'm going to start publishing stuff exclusively on Library and on BitChute. And the reason I would say you should subscribe to me on Library is because if I do an upload and I let you know on YouTube that I have an exclusive, it won't appear on BitChute until a few hours later. That's just the way it works over there. Nothing I can do about it. So Library, basically, it takes a few minutes to upload and then it's up. And I can have you watching the exclusive content as soon as you know about it. So I would say subscribe to me on Library. Look for me on Library. I am anxious to develop more of a following on platforms that allow you to address topics that are a little bit less conventional nowadays because of YouTube censorship. So those will probably be a little bit more abstract and broad topics, but certainly a little bit more spicy and opinionated content. So it says, this is a summary, okay? Well, we're just going to read through this. Joe Biden and his wife Jill have lied to the world for more than 40 years about how they started dating. They actually had an affair that broke up her first marriage, her first husband claims. And the whole story that Bidens tell about how the presidential candidate fell in love with Jill after a blind date is completely made up. Bill Stevenson told DailyMail.com in an exclusive interview. Now Stevenson is about to publish a book that he says will blow the lid off the sham story. I don't want to hurt anyone, Stevenson said. Now, I don't know if I can believe that, but he says if somebody had cheated, if I was married to someone and they cheated with some other dude and that dude ended up running for president, you're damn right I'd go after him. Fuck that guy. I don't want to hurt anyone, Stevenson, 72, said at his home in Wilmington, Delaware, the town Biden has called home for half a century. But facts are facts, and what happened, happened. And this is a story from back in the 70s or 80s, whenever, because he still looks kind of old, by the way. I don't know if Joe Biden has ever looked like actually young. He's always had sort of that balding look, even now that he has those hair plugs. Now, this is the guy. He looks like the dude that will, switch your propane tank on your grill if you've run out. But, we have to refrain from judging. I personally would say I wouldn't be surprised if this happened. Stevenson is keeping the title of his book close to his chest. I think that might be a hint. He said he has not yet decided whether to publish before the election or after. It's ready to go. He said they can print 30,000 copies in 10 days. I generally don't want to harm Jill's chances of becoming First Lady. She would make an excellent First Lady, but this is my story. It's not a bitter book. I'm not bitter because if it wasn't for my divorce, I would never have met my wife, Linda, and she's the greatest thing in my life, but it does have facts in it that aren't pleasant to Jill and Joe. People ask me how I can go back 40 years, but I am not. I'm going back 72 years to tell my life story. So this could be, just a. Now let me play, you know, let me play devil's advocate here. This guy was a club owner in Delaware in the 1970s, and those of you that are at least a little bit aware of Delaware, those of you that know a little thing about Delaware, it's sort of this trashy area. There's no reason to actually visit Delaware, except maybe if you're going to use the beach, or if you're looking for cheap adult entertainment. From what I understand, apparently, like Delaware is one of the states that is found. It's situated somewhere where you don't need to go through Delaware to get anywhere else, right? So it's just on it's on the coast of Maryland, but near Philly. So you don't necessarily need to go there. So a lot of the things that are happening there are just seasonal employment. There's a lot of credit card companies that use it as a tax shelter. I would love to visit Delaware to get a little bit more of a scoop on some of the shady stuff that goes on there. But this guy owned a club there, and I guess let's put that into context. Joe Biden's wife. Okay, this is not even passing judgment on whether this story happened. Joe Biden's wife is the ex-wife of a club owner from Delaware who operated a club in the 1970s. And those of you that know about the 1970s know that it wasn't exactly an era of clean living and chaste behavior. So I would not be surprised if there's skeletons in this guy's closet, if there's skeletons in her closet, if there's things that she didn't reveal about him because it doesn't reflect good on her and vice versa and on Joe Biden. But we'll see. So it says, people ask me how I can go back 40 years, but I am not. I'm going back 72 years to tell my life story. So what he could be doing here is trying to make a little bit of money off of his small association with the former second lady Jill Biden. And he wouldn't have published this a couple years ago when she was the wife of the vice president, because nobody really cares about the wife of the vice president. It's almost like being, one of the backup singers for one of these acts that Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, like an act that hasn't been around for decades. But I have all these stories. I was a backup singer for a group of people who half of them are dead and the other half have been replaced. Most people wouldn't read it. Rolling Stone once called it the best kept secret in rock and roll. Some of the biggest names in music, including the Allman Brothers, Metallica, Ray Charles, Run DMC, the Dave Matthews Band, David Crosby, who looks like a creep, Bonnie Raitt, and Hootie and the Blowfish played there during its 30-plus year history. So yeah, I think he's promoting himself in some way. The book is about 300 pages long, and Jill only takes up about 80 of them, Stevenson said. Well, we know why people will buy the book. Stevenson married Jill Jacobs in 1970. He says it was February, I believe it was the 7th, he told DailyMail.com. 2 years later, he said the couple were working on then Newcastle County Councilman Biden's first campaign for the Senate. At the time, Biden was married to his first wife, Nelia, who died along with their 1-year-old daughter, Naomi, in a car crash between the election and Biden taking his Senate seat. So that's well known. Biden's first wife, Nelia, did die in a car crash when he was in his 30s. You can see there's a photo of her back then. Now, I don't think this is a photo of them with. This is a photo of the car. There's a station wagon. This isn't a photo including the guy, Stevenson. Jill and I sat in the Biden's kitchen, said Stevenson, who describes himself as a liberal Republican, although he says he voted for Barack Obama and Biden in both 2008 and 2012. We worked on his campaign. I gave $10,900 to his first campaign in cash. Stevenson, who appeared with Biden on Delaware Today's 2012 list of the 50 most influential people from the state, said he had originally wanted to work for sitting Republican Senator Caleb Boggs, who was expected to win a re-election easily. But I had a disagreement with Boggs over corruption in Delaware, and he told me, get out of my office, go work for that joke Biden, who was then at only about 20% in the polls. Biden eventually eked out victory by just over 3,000 votes, 1.4%, running a campaign juxtaposing his youth and energy with 63-year-old Boggs, who admitted he didn't want to run for a third term and only did so because President Richard Nixon pleaded with him. Biden, just 29 on Election Day, became the sixth youngest U.S. Senator in history. Stevenson said he first suspected Biden and Jill were... So this is the juicy part. This is what I already read in the New York Post rewrite. So this is why you like the Daily Mail. They give you a little bit of ambiance to their salacious, gossip, which let me be clear. I think this might be true, okay? I'm not going to guarantee it's true, but if the Daily Mail is running it, there could be something there. Stevenson said he first suspected Biden and Jill were having an affair in August 1974. He was then 26. Jill was 23 and Joe was 31. I know exactly when it was. He said Bruce Springsteen was going to play at the Stone Balloon, and I had to go to northern New Jersey to pay him in advance. I asked Jill to go with me, and she said no. She had things to do. She had to look after Joe's kids, Bo and Hunter. It was kind of a big deal to go meet Springsteen. I had no idea, and she and Joe were that kind of friendly. So I think in 1974, let me see. So Bruce Springsteen, this is how I try to verify stuff. I try to see whether the contact text makes sense. So Springsteen's first album, it came in, well, I guess he's been out for much longer than I thought. It says that his discography goes back a little further than I thought. So his first album was Greetings from Asbury Park, and I don't think, well, Blinded by the Light came from that. So that is a famous song that was made more famous by, of course, Manfred Mann's Earth Band. But yeah, this is, it's not as if this is implausible. So he had two albums that year. That and The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. So yeah, it's perfectly plausible that this did happen. Okay, did it happen? I don't know. So then it says, then one of her best friends told me she thought Joe and Jill were getting a little too close. I was surprised that she came to me. So this is a photo of the guy back then. He looks a little bit like Doug Flutie, if you guys remember Doug Flutie. So this guy looks exactly like him. And this is the way he looks right now, and that's his old club. That October, he got confirmation. I was at work, and a guy came in and asked, do you own a brown Corvette? I said, yes, it's my wife's car. He said back in May it had crunched his bumper, and they told him to get an estimate, and he never heard back from them. I said, wait a minute, who is they? And he said, funnily enough, Senator Biden was driving. That was it as far as Stevenson was concerned. I asked Jill to leave the house, which she did. Her father was begging me to take her back. When he found out what was going on, he asked me to give her a second chance, but I wasn't interested. I considered Joe a friend. I'm not surprised he fell in love with Jill. Everyone who meets Jill falls in love with her immediately. It's hard not to. But the way the Bidens tell their love story, Joe saw a picture of Jill in March 1975 after her marriage had crashed. She was in an advertisement for local parks. What he saw while passing through Wilmington Airport with his brother Frank. He told Frank that was the kind of girl he would like to date, and Frank said, why don't you then? I know her, and passed on her number. So if there's any inkling that Joe Biden knew this guy, Bill Stevenson, and his wife Jill before 1975, Joe's got some splaining to do, as Desi Arnaz would say, aka Ricky Ricardo. Those of you that are real old school remember that. By the way, I Love Lucy was my sister's favorite show. In her 2019 autobiography, Where the Light Enters, Jill wrote that Joe called her and asked her out. She said she already had a date, but he persisted because he was only in town for one night, and she relented. They went to Philadelphia to see the French movie A Man and a Woman, ironically about a widowed man falling in love, and then went out to dinner. I think that the love on a blind date story is bullshit. It has to be. So, you know, despite him saying it, they already wrote this. The New York Times told a slightly different story. It said he didn't know his date was the drop dead gorgeous woman he had been admiring earlier until he picked her up. So then that doesn't make much sense because he specifically was looking for her, and he doesn't know that his date was the drop dead gorgeous woman he'd been admiring earlier. Jill and Joe Biden married at the Chapel of the United Nations in New York in June 1977. Another indicator that this was a match made in hell. Stevenson first met Jill in August 1969 and was leaving for Woodstock the following day. He said, I was at a car wash, and she and her friend came over to admire my 1968 Z28 Chevy Camaro. It was yellow with black stripes, all the rage of the time. I was going to my friend's birthday party that night, so I invited them along. There were 4 good-looking girls in that apartment, and I thought the more the merrier. The rest is history. They married the following year when Jill was only 18. In her book, she described her first husband as charismatic and entrepreneurial, but did not name him. She said her marriage soon fell apart. We were young and it didn't take long before we grew in different directions, she wrote. I think for some reason, look, I am starting to believe the story. I'm sorry. I'm starting to believe it. I apologize if it's wrong, but I think she's full of shit. I tried to make the relationship work. I thought I could will our marriage back to life. But I had to separate what I thought my family should be from the reality of what this relationship was. Before long, I began to see that the breaks were beyond repair, she added. I wouldn't settle for a counterfeit love. Like a broken spell, the truth of the reality struck me suddenly. I was going to get divorced. Let me see. I think there's a little video of this too. So, here we go.
Right. Yeah, this is not a secret here in Delaware. Right. Everybody knew she was involved with the campaign with me. I had a little bit of a disagreement with Caleb Boggs over helping me out.
Right.
When I felt that there was some corruption in Delaware, and Caleb Boggs told me, get out of my office, go see that joke, Joe Biden running against me. That's when Caleb was 80 and Joe was 20%.
Right.
Guess what? We won the election. And I consider Joe a friend. Right. And the problem is everybody who meets Jill from, when I met her in 1969 to right up till today falls in love with her immediately. It's hard not to.
Right.
And that's why I don't want to hurt her. But I also want the facts out. And I want to make sure that people know the story so going forward they're not so ready to jump in and, slow something down that I'm doing.
So, when did you first know that they were having an affair?
Officially, I can almost pick the date because it involved Bruce Springsteen coming to the Stone Balloon.
Right.
I had to go pay Bruce Springsteen in advance in the beginning of August 1974 for him to show up at the Stone Balloon the following week.
Right.
I asked her to go with me, and it shocked me when she said she had things to do. And I guess that's...
Where did you have to go? New York?
Yeah. No, North Jersey.
North Jersey, right.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all I can say about all that. But
and you knew then that the things you do were...
I was told shortly after that.
Yeah.
I was told by one of her best friends. That's what's even funnier yet. So the facts were pretty much the facts.
And so you were the one... It's right that you were the one that filed for divorce.
I'm actually not even sure. I asked her to leave the house.
Right.
And she moved, the following year, I waited a while. I thought maybe it would get over. Her father was begging me when he found out what was going on. Her father begged me to give her a second chance. Her father was an amazing man, and it gets me a little emotional when I think of that I lost her family. she does say something nice about that in her book. She said it's a fact that my parents love me, Bill.
Right.
I thought that was nice. Other than that, I'm the date.
Right.
So yeah, I think there is some basis for following up on this. I don't think that this is something you can just dismiss out of hand. I don't know if you can just accept his version of the story, but it is a little strange that she got divorced after knowing Biden. Now you can go back and see whether this Bill Stevenson contributed to the Biden 72 campaign. You can go back and see how they knew each other. If there's photographs of Biden with Bill Stevenson together, with Bill Stevenson and then Jill Stevenson, later Jill Biden together, and then that would refute this whole story that they have about, oh, I've met her, and because it was some photograph in a tourist brochure. I personally don't believe that, and I think that people who try to I think a lot of these people, they make up these love at first sight stories often in order to paper over, their very mundane and boring existence, right? I don't think it's really something that. Now, yes, there are some cases where people have very amazing click moments between them and their future spouse. I don't see that happening with Jill and Joe Biden. It's so anyway. It says, before long, I began to see that the brakes were beyond repair, she added. I wouldn't settle for a counterfeit love. Like a broken spell, the truth of the reality struck me suddenly. I was going to get divorced. Stevenson has led a colorful life. He played defensive end for the University of Delaware football team before opening the Stone Balloon. He was at Studio 54 in... So those are the Blue Hens, by the way. Joe Flacco played for them much later. Of course, he was at Studio 54 in New York with Annie Warhol and Lisa Minnelli and met some of the biggest names in rock through his club. He is a multiple gold medal winner at shot put in the National Senior Games. He also founded a horticultural company called Sticky Pots and invented the Super Steak, a plant support system that he recently sold to Scott's Miracle-Gro. They sold 1 million Super Steaks in So a lot of this, I think, is self-advertisement, and it might just be jealousy. But look, I don't see that this is just a bullshit story. And you have to remember, there's a couple angles where this actually is a little important. First of all, the Democrats have made hell to GOP officials over the past few years over meaningless bullshit that happened decades ago. That happened to Roy Moore over alleged things like talking to girls at the mall when he was in his 30s and they might have been in their teens. Back in the 70s in Alabama, they did the same thing to Brett Kavanaugh over meetings that nobody can ever prove ever happened, and that there's no recorded date or place or even location for. Place and location would be the same thing, but you get the drift. It is bullshit that Democrats, I think, in the next few days are going to say, oh, this is just mudslinging and salacious rumors and innuendo and slut shaming potentially because, let's say it's true. It is ridiculous. And another angle I want to bring up is the fact that Joe Biden, if this is true that he had sex with a married woman, this blows away all the bullshit about him being, a devout Catholic, like they say all the time in the media. You can type it in, Joe Biden, devout Catholic. He is not a devout Catholic. It is the furthest thing from the truth. It says Joe Biden and the Catholic factor, how Joe Biden's Catholic roots have shaped his public life. Trump said Biden hurt God. Biden draws heavily from his faith. Is Joe Biden a Catholic? It depends on who you ask. Biden, a devout Catholic, courts even religious conservatives. No, I don't think anybody who is a Roman Catholic would agree that somebody who is, he's cheating. Look, according to this story, the timeline establishes that his wife had died in the car crash and he was cheating on this woman was cheating on her husband with him, which is really what the biblical commandment against adultery is about. The biblical commandment about adultery, sorry women out there, has nothing to do with men cheating on their wives, on their husbands. It has to do with women cheating on their husbands, or the man who's having the affair with her. So if you are a homewrecker, the biblical commandment is about you. It's not about the husband who runs out. Like, I don't think necessarily that's according to the Old Testament, that's exactly tolerated as well. But that's not what the biblical commandment about adultery is. It is specifically about men who have sex with married women. So that's about it for today. I hope that you enjoy, as clearly I have, from this hilarious story, which, I don't think this shouldn't be about where you are on the spectrum. Do Marxists believe homewreckers are exempt from accountability, right? So let me ask this to all the feminist women out there. Do you think that a man who has sex with you and breaks up your marriage should be the president of the United States? Answer in the comments. I'd like to hear the explanation for why that is, right? The man who broke up your marriage and then years and years later, after a long bout with a habit of sniffing other women's hair, sometimes in your vicinity, and often confusing you with his sister, is now slipping away from reality. Should that person be president, right? So I want an honest debate in the comments, okay? Even if you're not one of these people, I want you to write as if you are a woman who had their marriage broken up by the vice president who is having attacks of dementia. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on all these other channels. And I said earlier that I will try to be doing library and BitChute exclusives. You should probably check them out on library again. And have a great day.